12 essential insights for emotional sobriety. I believe that this is going to be a definitive work in terms of defining emotional sobriety and laying out a path to achieve it. If you're stuck in recovery, or if you want to take the next step in your recovery, please read my book.
So we're continuing, I think we're concluding tonight on step 7. And my contributions along the way here from step 3 on, when I started, has really been to talk about emotional sobriety as awakening, as an awakening process, an awakening to love. And so for step 7, from an awakening perspective, is really moving from step 6, where we make a decision to dedicate ourselves to a life of love, to step 7, where we actually begin the practice of living a life of love. Remember, as I think about this in terms of step 1 going on forward, in step 1, we had this realization that Bill Wilson had, that really the dependence, the emotional dependence on people, places, things, circumstances, the affection of others, achievement, drugs, distractions, whatever, to feel lovable, to feel good. We realize it just doesn't work, and with, as Bill Wilson experienced, just great depression, really, when it was unworkable for him. And the awakening that sort of begins with step 2 is that sense that well, maybe there's a different way, and really the different way is to realize that we can't, that we have to experience our lovability from within. Really, it has to come from within. And maybe through step 3, perhaps with some relationship with something greater than ourselves, it's more transcendent. And then we've gone through the different steps and talked about the love wound and the healing of the love wound. And really now in step 7, we're really now making this dedication to really living for the we that contains the me, as a daily act of worship. So, Fromm talked about this as collaborating with integrity with the world. And another way of thinking about this in step 7 is we begin to actually live this dialectic, or this tension, this opposing tension between autonomy and interdependence, to be separate and one at the same time. And we basically are harmonizing, we're living a life of love is really harmonizing with our psychological imperative to become whole. It really is through living a life of love that we realize wholeness. So this is a lifelong practice of the art of loving. I was disappointed when I read Fromm's book, The Art of Loving, because he devotes most of the book to talking about what love is and different perspectives. And he spends just a few pages really talking about what you actually do to practice the art of loving. And so my comments tonight are going to be a little bit about, taking Fromm to the next step, which is what I think the step 7 is taking that next step of actually realizing all that we can be. In step 7, I see it as a step of emergence, really, into living of our new life. It reminds me a little bit of step 3 in terms of aligning and interweaving also with a higher power, the way that step 7 is worded. And I see that in part as the unconscious within us, and maybe even this idea that Jung talks about of the collective unconscious, and really tapping into that and really humbly devoting ourselves, of giving our lives over. There's a sense of a surrenderedness, of a devotion, a loving, humble, grateful devotion of our lives to loving ourselves and others and savoring this precious gift of existence. Now, I sort of boiled, if you weigh the 12 steps down into 3 steps that I teach clinically in my practice and write about And I've shared them with you before tonight, for those of you who've heard me before. And those 3 steps are the 3 A's of awakening, which are attending, appreciating, and acting with love. And it's really in step 7, we begin this intentional practice of attending, appreciating, and acting with love. Attending and appreciating, what that really, the combination of those two is really the beginning of the practice of love, which is cultivating loving awareness. The loving awareness is the root. When we develop loving awareness, we basically develop a sense of reverence for life, for ourselves, and for others that is radical, if you will, in terms of just the root of everything, and very unconditional. It doesn't fluctuate feelings of anger or boredom or loneliness or disgust or fear. It's just there continuously in the background. It's an attitude of reverence. So what we want to do is begin a practice of being present, loving presence, looking closely. I've talked about especially looking closely at pain. This is so important to look directly into our love wound, our feelings of unlovability or unworthiness, and really look right through the center, deep to the center of the pain, to the origins, oftentimes in past experiences of trauma, abuse, and neglect. And then the other thing that I think is really important for practicing loving awareness is to really attend very carefully to judgments and negative judgments that are just flying around all over the place. It's almost like we live in a battleground where we're being onslaught with negative judgments all over the place. And really, we're neurobiologically wired to judge. We have judging brains. That's how we've evolved to survive up until now. And really replacing judgments now intentionally on purpose with discernment, which is moving from good and bad to just seeing whether something is helpful or harmful, and taking out that negative valence of batting on the universe or reality or ourselves or others. And with that, what arises is total self-reverence of all that we are and of all that we each other are. And we're seeing all things and all people, including ourselves, as sacred through this practice. That is so important for then having the motivation and the inspiration to love, having the courage to live authentically, to confront our weaknesses or in our dark side, and to really live with those and integrate in an integrated, acceptant way. And also with the faults and flaws of others. With this practice of appreciative attending, my experience has been, and really the world's literature, it really, and the experience of others really very universally reflects this, is that there is sort of a falling away of shame and blame as we evolve in this practice of appreciative attending. And radical reverence then creates the fertile ground for personal, interpersonal, and spiritual growth. So we now are taking on the task in step 7 of loving ourselves rather than depending on external sources to heal our love wound. And we're healing our love wound through the cultivation of our own loving awareness. We do this. This is our job and no one else's, though others can support and guide us, as this meeting, I think, is doing for many people. So for me, this practice starts with the practice of cultivating a loving awareness, starts each day in stillness and ends in stillness with an intention to love. So I would like to, I uploaded a file, and I would like to basically just read this dedication that I've memorized, and I've uploaded it for you all and invite you all to look at it and see what you think of it. But basically, this is a dedication that I read at the end of my morning meditation every day. And it's my dedication to living an intentional life of love. So I'll just read this for you if you all want to join me in this. Again, this is off the prayer of St. Francis, adapted from him. I wish I could take credit for total originality, but I can't. May I be a channel of love. May I heal hatred with love. harm with forgiveness, doubt with faith, despair with hope, darkness with light, sadness with joy. May I seek more to console than to be consoled, to understand than to be understood, to love than to be loved. For I know that in giving we receive, in forgiving we are forgiven, and in transcending self we realize our greatest joy. So that's just an example of the kind of intentional devotion that I personally practice, that I've developed. And I start my day with that. And then I try and carry that loving awareness, that stillness in motion, I call it, to be still while still moving. That is everything. And then with that inspiration, with that reverence, with that groundedness, with that giving oneself over to be a channel of love, we then act with love. And we love ourselves, and we allow others to love us as part of loving ourselves. We ask for help, but we don't abdicate personal responsibility for our lives. And we love others. We love ourselves. We love others. We allow others to love us. So I'd like to now read just a little bit to you about each of 31 different love practices that I have developed and written about, and are part of my course on Mastering the Art of Loving that I give on Thursday nights at 5:30 before this meeting. So the first practice is abstaining from harm. This is probably so important that I had it once as the 4 A's of awakening, with abstaining being one of the 4 A's, but then I consolidated it into one of the 31 love practices. This includes harming yourself and others in words or deed. We abstain from good now, bad later impulses and cravings, such as lashing out at someone in anger or engaging in harmful addictions. Instead, abstaining involves metabolizing anger into constructive responses to harm and finding loving ways to soothe ourselves. Sometimes a loving thing to do is painful, such as telling someone a painful truth they need to know. So it does require discernment to ensure we abstain from causing harm, even when causing pain. Sometimes we can't help but harm someone for a greater good. An example might be in the extreme of protecting ourselves from an attacker, which is a rare thing that unfortunately most of us don't have to experience. The second practice is compassion for self and others. Compassion is acting to relieve our suffering and the suffering of others. Sometimes this may just involve giving others our caring and attention and support. The third practice is forgiveness of self and others. This involves liberating ourselves from negative judgments of ourselves and others. It involves honoring the reality of things and seeking to deeply understand the causes and conditions that drove us and others to cause harm. With deep understanding and the transcendence of judgment that I talked about, moving from judgment to discernment, we cultivate the conditions for forgiveness to arise. The fourth practice is protection. This includes protecting ourselves and others from harm. I put this first because it includes protecting really all of life, the one life of this planet, of which we are all an inextricable part. The fifth practice is caution. This entails taking care to minimize or avoid risk of harm, both the risk of harming ourselves and the risk of being harmed. The sixth practice is connection. This is the practice of safely seeing others and being seen by others. When we connect, we share with others what is going on in our lives and what we are thinking, feeling, and doing in response. This connection helps us not to feel alienated and helps us to manage life's ups and downs. The seventh practice is authenticity. This is the practice of being real with others and also with ourselves, while varying how transparent we are with others depending on the intimacy of the relationship. The eighth practice is collaboration. This is the practice of cooperation and teamwork to achieve goals we cannot achieve on our own. The ninth practice is trust. This includes trust in ourselves and our own goodness. It includes trust in the practice of love. And it includes taking progressive steps, intelligent steps of progressively trusting in people who prove themselves to be trustworthy. The 10th practice is assertiveness. This is the practice of asking for what we want, telling other people what we don't want, and setting limits on others as needed. The 11th practice is affirmation. We affirm both our own and other people's innate goodness. We freely give praise where praise is due. We affirm the good qualities and behaviors of other people. The 12th practice is nurturing. We nurture the growth, well-being, and vitality of all of life, including nurturing ourselves and nurturing others. Nurturing comes in the form of guidance, support, encouragement, and believing in ourselves and others. The 13th practice is acceptance. This is a practice that springs from our practice of appreciation. We accept ourselves and others for exactly who we are, and we accept the way things are. In all things, we say, I consent. Through acceptance, we create the conditions for healing, growth, and constructive change. The 14th practice is consideration. We consider the feelings, wants, and needs of others. We think through what would be beneficial and what would be harmful to others. We practice being as mindful as possible of the consequences of our actions on other people. The 15th practice is empathy. We inquire deeply into the experience of another to understand their beliefs, thoughts, and feelings. In this way, we help others to feel known. The 16th practice is kindness. This is the practice of an attitude of unconditional friendliness towards ourselves and others, even when we are upset or angry. Not an easy practice. The 17th practice is generosity, in which we freely and joyfully give of our time, our attention, our talents, or our material resources to benefit others. The generosity of love gives with a full and open heart without expecting anything in return. The 18th practice is helpfulness. We help each other to bear and overcome life's difficulties and challenges. We help others with that which they cannot do for themselves. The 19th practice is humility. In practicing humility, we see our place in the larger scheme of life, holding ourselves as no more or less than any other person. We maintain an abiding sense of both our infinite sacredness and our insignificance. The 20th practice is respect. We show ourselves and others respect unconditionally out of our commitment to being respectful. We keep our own self-respect through our practice of integrity. The 21st practice is patience. Seeing that all things happen in their own time, we are patient with ourselves and others. In this, we also practice humility.
Sorry to interrupt, but
We also practice humility, acknowledging that the world does not revolve around our expectations of how things should be or when things should happen. The 22nd practice is accountability. We hold ourselves accountable for our actions. We move from victim to survivor and thriver. We take complete responsibility for our lives. We also hold others accountable for their actions. We live an excuse-free life. The 23rd practice is integrity. This is the practice of doing the next right thing, moment by moment and day by day, even when no one is looking. We maintain our respect through our integrity and make ourselves trustworthy with others. The 24th practice, we're almost done, is repair. This is the practice in which we seek to make amends and provide restitution for the harm we have done. The 25th practice is courage. Courage is doing what is right and good, what is loving despite our fear. Courage helps fortify our integrity when there is a risk of harm. The 26th practice is discipline, the D word. Discipline is the capacity to do what is best for us and others, even when we don't feel like it. I think somebody, Jonathan, I think your mic is on.
Yeah, I think we're getting attacked, so I'm trying to kick people out as we go along.
Okay. Are we getting Zoom bombed?
It could be. See, Alan doesn't show up and all kinds of stuff falls apart.
Oh, there you go. Okay. Discipline involves consistency and persistence in the face of tedium and temptations. The 27th practice is contentment. Contentment is being happy with who we are, with the people in our lives, and with our life situation, just as it is. It is a practice of reverence for this moment, for others, and for ourselves, just as we are. When we are content, this moment is more than enough. And as they sometimes say, enough is a feast. The 28th practice is gratitude. This is the practice of being thankful to others for how they have benefited us and for the good in our lives. The practice of gratitude also stems from our practice of appreciation. The 29th practice is hope. One form of hope in particular, mature hope, sees that in the long run, good prevails over evil and things will eventually work out somehow, some way. Hope sees there is good even in quote unquote bad situations. Hope sees a path to a better future. The 30th love practice is endurance. Endurance is the ability to withstand hardship and adversity. It is the capacity to keep going when the going is rough. Our love gives us the grit. Our love gives us the grit to persist and prevail. The 31st practice, the last one, is devotion. Out of reverence, we devote ourselves to the people in our lives, to our life purpose, and to our love-based principles, and to the practice of loving. So you can see that there are many ways to love, many ways to love. There are many ways to benefit yourself and others. And together, we weave these 31 practices into a tapestry of the art of loving. So that's just a quick overview. This is a lot, and I hope it's not overwhelming for me to share these 31 ways to love. 31 ways to love your lover. But I think that really, we sort of work on these a little bit every day. I invite my patients and students to take one practice a week and maybe work on one practice a week over several weeks. So you can see that step 7 is embarking on a lifelong practice of the art of loving, doing so humbly, gratefully, one day at a time, out of a feeling of a calling to love. For those of you, who are interested in mastering the art of loving through the practice of these skills, I do have a weekly webinar program on Thursdays at 5:30 before Ellen's webinar. And it really complements the work of this webinar. And you can sign up for this on my website at drmichaelmcgee.com. And if you enter the code AWAKENING, it would allow you to sign up for a free trial. So those are my comments.
Well, thank you very much for that. I always appreciate your perspectives. And I guess we can jump into our follow-up speakers, our panelists, Tom and Roger. I don't know if either one of you wants to jump in first, but I will leave it up to you.
Hi, Roger.
Hey, Tom. Hey, I defer to you.
Okay. Well, I'll be brief because I want to have, there's a lot here. and I want to leave plenty of time for people to share too. I really, it's, it is. I mean, the thing is, Michael, I love your material, and it's like, and it's. I love what you did at the end, which is to say, to say take a few at a time, a little bit at a time, because that's so it's been so important to me, because I know that I've talked about my self-judgment in this meeting a lot. So one of the things that I historically could do is take that amount of information and go and just take, and this is a great example about love. And I would take myself out back and beat the crap out of myself, because I'm not absorbing it at all and that kind of stuff. And it's like, but what it made is, and I appreciate, and I feel my own growth, because I actually wrote a couple of things down before you even got to the place where you said you have your clients and students take it a little at a time. Is for me, it's like, I'll just share personal. You shared kind of from your personal meditation. My morning starts with because I tried so hard to become like this master meditator. I was going to be this. I had this idea of what that was going to be, and then I would just become obsessed with getting the right meditation pillows and the right this and that and all this other stuff. I would be so easily distracted. But I've landed and actually for many years now, I've landed on these 3 words that I use every morning as I walk out of my house to let the ducks out of their little pen for the day. And the 3 words are gratitude, humility, and kindness. And the way and they're all in there, what you're saying. But those are just 3 of those words that I connect to the most. And I actually have this thought, this very conscious thought, that if my day can include those 3 things, it's a good day. And it's and I also have used a practice where I just try to, and I encourage my clients to do this sometimes too, just get one sentence that is a good way to start your day. And I use this one driving into work, which is, mine is quite simple. It's help me be, I guess it's a prayer. Help me be useful today and to have a nice time. And it's like one of the things I've always added for that is, that's not a frivolous thing to me to have a nice time. I think for so many people, this idea, because I think this is a way of being, I often talk about how self-love is overwhelming of self to me, because as a recovering self-hater. But I think having a nice time, finding joy, enjoying myself, laughing, seeing the humor in things, those kinds of things. I think I've learned that. I think I may have gotten more and more of that as I've listened to you, Michael, as a matter of fact. So I'll give you some kudos for that I think I really realized that my humor is a part of self-love for me. So that and I think anybody who knows me knows that matters a lot. But it's not the frivolous thing of like just everything has to be fun. It's about finding joy. It's not, that's not always just the hilarious fun stuff, but just, it's like when you're working with if you're working with a client in a very intense way, even with deep pain, there's joy in that. It's like because you're connected. It feels like the joy is so much a part of the purpose. So anyway, that's what I would just say is just, and what I would say to people who are getting this stuff is to take what get what you have there and read through it again and look through it and realize it reminds me of reading one of, Anthony DeMello's books. I love Anthony DeMello, and my favorite book is Awareness. And it's just, excerpts of his speaking, but it's such a small little book. And you could read 3 sentences of that. And it's like the richest dessert in the world. I mean, you could just, it's almost too much to read too much of it, but everybody just find the stuff that really resonates with you. And then, like what you say, practice it. And it's like, it is all about the practice.
Yeah.
I said I was going to be brief, and I wasn't.
You were. Anthony DeMello is my most favorite author, at least right now.
Oh, he's so amazing.
Work. Really encourage him. And before Roger talked, to respond a little bit, Tom, you start your day with an intention, and it is an intention to practice. And I do think our purpose in life is to nurture life and to savor life. And you say that in such a great down to earth way, just
Mhm.
to be a benefit and have a good time.
Mhm. That's it. That's it.
Wow, thank you both so much for what you've shared tonight. Michael, I want to thank you for putting both the attitude and the experience of love front and center in this discussion of the 12 steps, but also in life. It's an idea, an attitude, and an experience that I return to again and again each day in my life. Am I able to adopt an attitude of love toward myself right now? Am I able to adopt an attitude of love toward others? And if not, what are the obstructions and obstacles that I experience? And I really appreciated you mentioning that becoming able to look directly at our pain. And you referenced that too, Tom, that
Mhm.
the working on our pain can actually be an act of joy. And that's a weird thing to say
Yep.
for many of us. And it certainly has been for me at many times. But so many times if I'm in the role of a client and I'm doing some deep work on a very painful subject, even as I'm sobbing, there's a peace inside of me and a joy inside of me
Yes.
because I'm not running away. I'm not hiding. I'm embracing the pain that I'm experiencing. I try to appreciate the courage and the willingness in myself that it takes to do that, or my anger, or other emotions that I tend to flee from.
But you're fully in the present when you're doing it.
When-
The pain itself, if you think about what pain does, pain always brings us to the present.
That's right. And that's a really powerful idea, Tom. I often tell myself and my clients that to me, the greatest challenge I face in my life, and I think many of us face in our lives, is to learn how to love myself and love others more fully each day. I don't know of a greater challenge, at least for me, and all the, negative influences and what we call introjections, negative beliefs that I absorbed growing up and so on. I don't know of a greater challenge or a more worthy challenge. So Michael, I mean it, man, from my heart. Thank you so much for all the thought that you've given to this subject and putting it, as I said, front and center in our lives. So I appreciate what you've said very much. Thank you. And I too would love to hear other people's sharing at this point. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks everyone. I'm Tom, I'm an alcoholic and a whole bunch of other stuff. Thanks for the kickoff tonight. I really appreciate the dedication to love. When I started meditating on the prayer of St. Francis on a daily basis, it rewired my brain. It spiritually to what I thought was my true self, and turns out it is. And I even have a short version if I need to during the day. It's make me a man of peace, make me a man of love, make me a man of service, and those are my my principles. So thanks for pulling that all together.
One of the things that it's important for us to think about in our recovery is our relationship to our emotions. I know that depending on the way we're raised, certain feelings and certain emotions are going to be okay. They're going to be acceptable. And those that aren't are going to be pushed aside and disowned. But recovery is about recovering your lost true self. See, it's about achieving wholeness again. Because when I fragment myself, and when you've fragmented yourself, you can't function well in life. You can't cope effectively with life. We need all of us to show up to be able to deal well with life. Well, emotional sobriety is about discovering new possibilities. Recovery is about recovering our lost true self and discovering new possibilities.